Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here on this next edition of Meditation in Art, Art in Meditation, videocast and or podcast. I'm so honored and delighted to have with me today as my special guest, Nick Daez. Nick Daez is a Kundalini Yoga and meditation teacher and sound healer. He completed his teacher trainings in New Mexico, Tibetan singing bowl teacher training in Kathmandu, Nepal. I'm very envious of that. I wish I could have done that myself. Educator course at the Green School in Bali, and received teacher training in leading shamanistic healing rituals in Palawan. By the way, if you haven't been to Palawan, please get up there. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in the world. An incredible place. What a place to do such a training. I imagine it must have been amazing. Nick embraces his calling to serve and teach. He leads shamanistic energy healing rituals and does creative work as a multi-disciplinary artist. He co-founded the award-winning boutique video production company Seabiscuit Films, which is based in Manila in the Philippines. So welcome, Nick. Plenty here to talk about. Would love to just jump right in. And why don't you first tell me how you got started in your spiritual practices before we get into the art side of things. What led you to yoga, meditation? Yeah.
Well, I was dabbling in yoga way back in college. It was basically around 12 years ago. But I was just basically shopping around, and then when maybe like 6 years ago, I attended this Hindu gathering in Manila, and a lot of the women there were Kundalini Yoga practitioners, and they were like, "You got to join a class. There's this beautiful space. There's American teachers leading the classes," and I was like, "Okay, let's check it out." And I remember that very first class to be like a magical experience. It was a very visceral, like something I've never ever experienced before. Like it was just so powerful, and I was hooked. I mean, I was going every day. It led me to India, to Nepal, to New Mexico, and it just opened a lot of doors into like the spiritual practice, I guess, and other esoteric modalities. So from Kundalini Yoga, I explored Reiki, the Theta healing, and doing the Vipassana, White Tantric Yoga. So until now, it's still opening up a lot of doors and windows. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it is quite a journey when you get started on that. It's funny, sometimes you take one step on that path, and then all of a sudden it just goes and goes and goes and goes, like you said. Yeah.
Goes and goes. Exactly. Right? Never ends.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things.
Best part. It's the best part.
It is. I found it to be one of the most exciting aspects of the spiritual journey, is that it never ends, and you learn 5 new things, and then there's 10 more things that, oh wow, this goes this way. Let's check that out. Yeah. And you can
really, that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving. That's well said. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of things there. So you went to this, where the Hindu group was in Cebu?
No, it was in Manila.
Manila.
Like it was a community of Hindus. They usually gather pretty regularly in the city. So, when some of my friends were part of the group, and they just invited me.
Yeah. And then you said you went to a Vipassana course.
Yes, I did it in Nepal, actually, in Kathmandu, 3 years ago.
All right. Was that the traditional 10-day?
Yes, the Goenka Vipassana.
Yeah, I've done a couple of those. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience. Very, very difficult, though. I mean, that was something I wasn't really prepared for, but the insights and just the experience itself was incredible.
I bet that's a great setting to do a retreat like
that. Yeah. I mean, we ended Christmas Day. It was like just surreal to be so close to the people there, even if you didn't really talk, but like you created these bonds that were so deep and powerful.
Mm. Yeah, it is interesting how even on a silent retreat, this kind of a family vibe gets
Yeah,
cultivated, and you're kind of,
yeah,
you're in the trenches together, and
exactly.
really pulling.
Trenches is that's such a fitting description. It's really the trenches there. It's not a holiday.
No, I often laugh when, yeah, I facilitate retreats here in Thailand, and I often have a snicker when people come and they bring their bathing suit, and they think they're gonna, be tanning out at the pool and maybe meditate a few hours a day. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When people always ask me about that, when they're like, "Hey, I want to do a silent retreat," I always ask them first, "Are you sure this isn't like some romanticized idea of being in the mountains?" But I always tell them, even if you're not ready, go for it because it's worth it. I
yeah.
mean, it's really if it calls to you, then try it out.
It is a profound experience. Yeah, good, good. Yeah. So now you've been teaching
Yes.
as a part of your spiritual journey, and so tell me more about your teaching. What are you offering and your process?
Well, like lately, I've been offering Kundalini Yoga classes, and then I also facilitate sound baths, and I also teach very basic meditation sessions as well. And I guess in terms of the teaching journey, it's pretty new to me. It's only been like 2 years, but the last, I guess, this year with the pandemic, it forced me to pivot a lot into the digital sphere, which was, I mean, to be honest, it was difficult. Like the first few months, I couldn't really connect energetically with my students through like a camera and like talking to a video, and some of them turn off their videos as well. So that was a bit of a learning curve. But then I realized I can reach more people through the medium. I mean, that's a silver lining, and I can teach a lot as well. So I think it's a lot of learnings from it, and it's been special. I never thought I actually didn't even take the teacher trainings to be a teacher. They were all simply to deepen the learning,
Mhm.
like of this spiritual journey. But like I remember when I finished teacher training, I was like, I just want to share this. And originally, I just wanted to be like I guess more like some form of service. I mean, it still is, but it's evolved to being a full time job. So it's an interesting thing to have something sacred as your work. You really, no matter what, you feel you got to show up. I mean, that's how I feel. Like you have a responsibility to your students and to yourself, because I think that's the one thing I was really surprised about. Like when you teach, you hear yourself speak and you're actually giving yourself advice.
Mhm.
And you when you come out of the class, you realize, wow, I didn't even know I needed that. So it's an interesting experience.
Yeah. Yes, what you're speaking of, I'm very familiar with that, and I think it's almost like you're in this situation, and these teachings, because you've studied, you've done your training and so forth, you know them on kind of a subliminal level or on a visceral level, if you will. But then when they're called to the front, and you have to verbalize them in your own way, when you're giving them to a student, to address whatever situation they're calling up. And then you see it in a different way, you learn it in a different way, and yeah, it becomes like you said, another part of your own learning. Yeah, I can certainly relate to that, and I think that's one of the great. I don't know if you're familiar with the Buddha's life story, but
Yeah,
he
yeah,
became a teacher. I mean, he went and had his enlightenment experience. It took him several years, but then he had this awakening. But that awakening wasn't complete until he formulated it into a teaching and created a group, a sangha, that he could offer that teaching to. And that's when he really became the Buddha. And I think that part of his life and the legend that his life became is often overlooked. That
yeah,
that's what completes the circle, is when we come around with what we've learned and then begin to verbalize it and to offer it to others. It completes our own
exactly.
meaning. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really. I mean, I remember, I guess, in this last 6 years of being a student, there were, there something felt missing. And even if, I didn't know it was teaching. I didn't know teaching would be the answer. But looking back in hindsight, I think it was building up to that, the longing to serve and to share.
Mm.
And it's been fulfilling, honestly. Like I've never felt this fulfilled in my entire life, to be honest. I mean, compared to the career that I had before this, now it's really spiritually nourishing for me.
Mm. What a beautiful thing. Yeah. And so you mentioned the career you had before this, and was that the film making, or is that in
Yes,
conjunction?
filmmaking, correct.
Okay. And so, um, but you're still involved with that, or have you gone into other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I still own the company, but I'm basically just a shareholder now. Like I jump into meetings every now and then, but I'm hands off with operations, and I'm not directing anything at the moment. But there have been opportunities that have been presenting itself that are pretty aligned with, I guess, my values now. So I'm not closing the door to it, but it's not something I'm totally committed to. Like for me, the commitment now is with teaching.
Okay. Yeah. I don't. I imagine it's the same for you, but for me, I'm going to just explore the film aspect for a moment,
Sure, sure.
because for me, I love a good movie, and
Same
I
here.
really love a good movie that has spiritual undertones.
Yeah,
And particularly if it's a movie that isn't advertised as such, but all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that was something really deep and profound that came out of
yeah,
that. Maybe it's just a 5 minute scene, but it's like, whoa, like a different writer must have stepped in and took over that moment.
for sure, for sure. They're
Uh,
just the
and it
vessel.
just
They're
gives
just
me
the vessel.
chills. Yeah. And so I imagine it's quite similar for yourself. And wow, I mean, we need more of that.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean,
yeah.
I think that was sort of I mean, I have created some content that were rooted in spiritual teachings and practices.
Mm.
But I think, like stepping away from it was really important. I mean, I'm still sort of away from it, but now I've been, connecting with more local films that are really like talking about a lot of relevant issues in the Philippines. And, I've been fascinated with tribal culture lately. And I think like these voices need to be heard. And there are a lot of stories that are dying. And I feel like
Mm.
moving forward, I'm probably going to do something along the lines of, like maybe like shamanism and tribal cultures and the spiritual practices of these groups. So
Mhm.
it's exciting stuff.
It is, yeah. I've actually recently done some research on trauma sensitive mindfulness, and have been making that a kind of a passion, a study of mine, because we know that mindfulness can and does heal, but for people who carry
Yeah,
trauma, often the traditional form of mindfulness, coming through the breath and through the body and so forth, is challenging because we hold trauma in the lungs often.
yeah,
So breath work is anyway. So what I realized, or what I came across in my studies quite recently, was shamanism actually serves to heal trauma. A lot of the
yeah,
rituals are directly for that, for trauma
yeah.
healing. So I too, like yourself, am kind of really starting to explore that. I've never done any shaman rituals myself, or any. My research is rather superficial at this point, I must say, but I am very intrigued, and would love to see more of that coming out into the mainstream culture as well. Mm.
For sure. No, I think there's really I can see the openness into like this resurgence of shamanism and like local practices because I think we need that. I mean, we need to reconnect with our roots, and a lot of it is based on shamanism, to be honest. And these spiritual practices are ancient, and everyone's sort of easing into it very slowly. It's becoming more mainstream with the apps, but for me, it's important, especially in this time.
Mm. Indeed, indeed, yeah, because uh, I think we are globally having kind of a traumatic situation, and there might be some great healing held in those rituals and ancient cultures. So yeah, it's great.
Exactly.
Sounds like you're going to be on the forefront of that. So what a wonderful thing.
Exciting times, really. Like it's actually really strange because like, my industry, the video production industry was hit pretty badly in the first 3 months of the pandemic. But then the irony was like the yoga, the meditation was like just, it exploded. Like people that don't normally join would join. And it's, I was talking to a lot of my friends who were, in the wellness industry, who are healers, and they were saying it's, we're needed more than ever now, because like people need to hang on to something. They need to have hope, and that's our jobs to like help them find that within themselves. So it's yeah, it's like we're all forced to step up, and it's great. It's great.
It is. It's wonderful to have that. I feel the same way in my own work. We're as you say, being called up. We're on the front line in a way to try to keep the energy in a positive light and offer that healing to
Exactly.
anyone who's willing to receive it. Yeah. Mm. So I do want to talk some about your artwork. I know you've been doing some painting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
A lot of art therapy.
so yeah, I'd like to hear about for myself too. I am a writer, and I used to be a musician, and I know the meditation process and techniques can influence the creative process, and the creative process also influences the meditation. I'd like to hear some of your experiences on that. How does your spiritual practice influence your art?
Well, I think, I've always dabbled in painting throughout the years, but like I realized that in the years before, I was always coming painting from a place of pain whenever I was going through a lot of hardships. But this past 2 years, though, like having a regular meditation practice, I realized that my art was just transforming into something totally different. There was a lot more stories that were coming out, and not even conscious stories, like very deep subconscious things that I guess would only materialize through my sketches and through my paintings. And I don't plan my paintings, my works. I just allow myself to get into a stream of consciousness, and it's been great, like and it's strange how like even with my meditations now I see colors. Like I see paint strokes. I see, brush strokes. It's crazy how things are so intertwined, and it's the ultimate catharsis for me to paint, and to really just trust the process and to let things unravel on their own. It's very healing, and it really I'm starting to see I guess the overlaps and the synergies with having a meditation practice.
Yeah, it's I find that process, and you kind of hinted at it, to be almost identical to a meditation, where you said you let the thoughts go, and you just kind of enter into that stream of consciousness space, and then whatever emerges comes out. And so and for me, when I'm writing, that's kind of how I write. I sit at the computer and allow the thoughts to subside. Sometimes I'll meditate for half an hour beforehand, and then just go to the computer and just start. And whatever arises on the screen, that's what's going to be written. Now, I do go through an editing process, and admittedly, but it sounds like yourself, perhaps you don't do much of that, where you're at the
I
canvas.
just let it flow. I mean, like I am very analytical, to be honest. That's sort of my default. So it's a process learning how to let go and just be a bit more spontaneous. So like I do also do that. Like I do catch myself thinking while I'm in it, and I try to let it go again. So it's never perfect. I mean, it's not for me. I always tell myself now that painting and meditating, it's not a pursuit of perfection. It's just the journey, and
Mhm.
it's always gonna be ebbing and flowing, and you just need to like relax into that. And it's not just supposed to be, a linear trajectory.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's an important aspect of art. Is that it's not supposed to be perfect, and it's one of the reasons why I left music. Actually, is because there's so much emphasis now in the recording studios with music. I mean, everything's all on computer, so you can line up every note exactly perfect, and so there's no chance for error at all.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
really, even in jazz, which was what I was performing mostly, the
I
jazz,
love jazz.
it's wonderful, and it's an improvisational art form,
Yeah,
and it can be very spiritual in that way.
can
But I
imagine.
think it has to have that element of walking that tightrope without a net,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and that has to have that stream of consciousness where you just release into whatever's arising, whether it
exactly.
sounds good or sounds bad. It's irrelevant at that point. And so, but with the computers, it's like it changed everything. It took that element of
Yeah,
noise away, and that was one of the
I
things that.
totally feel you.
Mm, yeah.
I think it's the same with the filmmaking. Like that's what wore me down towards. That's why I left directing 3 years ago. It's an art form, but I mean, I was working in the commercial industry and the documentary filmmaking field, so there was a lot of precision necessary. You need to, script write everything, storyboard to
Mm,
down to the nitty gritty, and I mean, it was creatively, yeah, it was challenging and satisfying, but having a lot of restrictions gives you a lot of I guess it stifles you as well. And I was really yearning for, I guess, some spontaneity and to be able to interpret it the way I wanted to. And I think my journey as a teacher has also evolved with that. Like I was following the template, so to speak, of the Kundalini Yoga teacher training, and they told us this is how you're supposed to teach. But then I remember in the first year of teaching, I was just following it, but then I started getting bored, and I
mhm.
felt like I was sounding very robotic. And I decided, okay, maybe I gotta change this up a bit and be me. So I think it has to embody your. It's not like you're changing it. It's more like you're just embodying who you who you who you've become. With the teachings, and I think that's important to be unique and to speak your truth. And I think that it resonates with your students as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I found that to be the truth as well. I mean, if we are, when we're teaching, we're trying to emulate another teacher. Well, then your students might as well go study with that teacher, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
they're coming to us because hopefully we have a particular voice, a particular flavor, a particular insight into those teachings that resonates with them, that other teachers don't offer, that don't have. And so you're right, absolutely, to find your own voice in that, and that is the creative process, and how the creative process influences meditation or spiritual teachings. And I think every teacher has to go through that, where okay, we learn
Yeah.
how to teach by emulating other teachers, but then okay, we got to set that down and go out on a limb and create our own voice, our own sound
Yeah.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's such a mirror for real life. Like, even if you do find your voice, you're gonna need to constantly evolve as well, because either your students will get tired of your voice or you'll get tired of yours. Like, if you keep doing the same spiels, you keep, I mean, you gotta be creative. And I think that's all, for me, that's exciting though, to constantly refine and to
Mhm.
change things up. Yeah, and because I mean, you're teaching the same things, but you can present them in a different way. And I think for me, that's the fun part of teaching, of
Mhm.
finding ways and really trying to just speak your truth rather than just bouncing off spiels from your head.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. With these teachings, I don't think there's any, there's no formulaic answer to any one question that a student could ask, really. And that's one of the, to use the, one of the teachings, to be in the present moment. You always have to really be in the present moment with a student when they're asking something. And not to fall into a pat answer with whatever they're asking, but to hear, to perceive their energy, to perceive how they're asking the question, where it's coming from. Because if one person asks a question in a certain way, and then another person, a day later asks the same question, but the answer could be totally different, depending on where they're coming from and what they're bringing to the table with that question. And that does absolutely require that improvisational nature, that ability to be creative, which obviously is coming out in your paintings as well. It's beautiful work, by the way. I saw on your Instagram page.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Really, really lovely colors, and they really pop. Everything's like, wow, that's really beautiful. Breathtaking artwork. Yeah. By the way, anybody watching and listening here, please do go check out Nick Daez on Instagram. His artwork there is really quite extraordinary and very spiritual, very deep. Yeah. So I want to talk.
Much.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about your offerings that you're offering online. You mentioned briefly, but I want to rewind to that. And so you said you're offering, is it daily meditations through Zoom?
Pretty much. I just started the daily meditations recently, actually. So I do 20-minute audio-only Zoom sessions every night. So, I do have a day off today, but like starting tomorrow till Sunday, every 8:30 in the evening, I basically facilitate a meditation session, and every day is basically a different style, based on Kundalini. Some of them are, like based on some shamanic journeys, but all very basic for beginners. It's really geared towards first timers.
Nice. And so is there an opportunity for people to ask questions through that, or is it basically you're guiding? How does that work?
Well, I mean, like I do eventually want to get to that. Like, I am constantly refining it. And, just you mentioning this reminds me that I do want to integrate that, like a question and answer, portion. And even with my Kundalini yoga classes, I feel like that's the missing part that's what I miss the most. Like when I used to teach before, after class, you would gather, over tea, have a conversation. And I think it's, even through Zoom, I think we could do that, and you just kind of need to start it. So it is missing that interaction component, which I really enjoy.
I totally second that as well. Yeah.
It's like we're just like, we're videos, okay, class is done, end the call and do your thing. But like, I mean, it's I think it's very much needed now, especially these days.
Yeah. Maybe we can do one together at some point. Host a Q&A.
Yes, no, that'd be great. That'd be awesome.
It would be good.
We should do that. I love collaborations.
Yeah. Well, I think in this time, in this day and age, more of that is welcome for sure. So yeah, well, that sounds like a future conversation to be had.
For sure. Looking forward to it.
So people can find you doing these guided meditations through your Facebook page, or?
Yes, I post them on Facebook and on Instagram. Okay. So I'm mostly on Instagram. Facebook, I just reshare everything I post on Instagram, but Instagram's my main social media space.
Okay, great. And you have a podcast as well.
Yes, I do.
Tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Paliwanag. So Paliwanag is a Filipino word it literally means to explain, but the deeper meaning of the word means to enlighten. So the background of Paliwanag comes from conversations I used to have like more than 8 years ago with like, like very old buddies of mine, and they're also into spirituality. They're also very I guess awakened. So we always thought about like, hey, it'd be so cool if we could like gather people together, strangers, and just converse. And we actually had a couple of gatherings the past few years, but it was hard to sustain, with life and responsibilities. But when the pandemic happened, my friend Snap, who's we created Paliwanag together. We basically thought, why not do the podcast online? Like everyone's home, we can do them on Zoom. So we've filmed 20 episodes already. Actually, I think episode 14 is already 15 is online, and it's we basically talk about spirituality, alternative living, but from very different perspectives, from a chef to a rapper, to a climate change advocate, to a stay-at-home mom, to former professional basketball players. So we're trying to like really diversify with the conversations, and they're truly they're so much fun. I mean, like we do it because it's fun, and it's nice that we're getting engagement with a lot of people, and it's one of those projects that I just look forward to. We film twice a week, and we're just trying to like do more because it's so nice to hear different points of view.
Mm.
And I think now the podcast platform is, I think it's just experiencing a resurgence, because I think now everyone's home, so people want to listen. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes you get like visual fatigue, but for some reason when you listen, you can keep listening to somebody, or like music.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting experience.
Mm. Great. That sounds great. I'm going to check that out. Sorry, I haven't yet already. But
No,
thank
no, no,
you.
it's okay. It's
Uh,
okay.
and that's available on Spotify, right?
Spotify, and for the visual people out there, you can watch them on YouTube as well.
On YouTube as well. Okay, great. Great. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today for this interview, chat, conversation. I think of them more as chats really than anything else. Yeah,
Thanks for having me, Chris. Really, it's been
oh,
nice talking
really a
to you.
pleasure, and a pleasure to connect with other teachers and creative types as well. I
Likewise,
love to see
likewise.
the meditation manifest in art. For me, it's such a beautiful
Yeah,
thing, like watching a sunset. So, and thank you for doing that
really is.
and providing that. Yeah. Um,
You're welcome.
so,
Thank you. Thank you for.
my pleasure, Nick.
Thanks,
Thank you all
thanks so
for
much,
tuning
Chris.
in. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll be back. I don't know when. If there are any artists out there who meditate, or any meditators who do art, please do send a message over. And I do have a couple of people lined up for next month, but we'll get you in here for sure. So I look forward to hearing from all of you at that time. Have a great evening wherever you are. Please stay safe, stay healthy. If you're in a country that's having this mask debate, wear your masks. Please wear your masks. They work. And wash your hands, practice your social distancing, and we'll make it through this pandemic together. Thank you again. Be well. Thanks.